Hey there, stick around to the end of this tale and hit that subscribe button. I never imagined the beginning of the end would unfold in a boardroom, not after all we'd endured to build this empire from scratch, countless sleepless nights crunching figures while Lauren worked her magnetic charm on investors. I figured if anything was going to shatter me, it'd be in a quiet courtroom or a dimly lit living room after a fight we both knew was final. But no, my unraveling started with the sharp click of her stilettos on polished granite and a room full of people pretending not to stare. The annual shareholder meeting was already underway when she strode in, 32 minutes late. It wasn't out of character. Lauren, 42, always had a knack for dramatic timing, especially when it fed her need to dictate a room's rhythm. She knew precisely when to arrive, how to command attention, and she did, chin high, dress clinging like it was crafted by divine hands, lips curved in that smile she wielded to disarm or destroy. She was captivating and vicious. I couldn't bring myself to look at her at first, my eyes glued to the dossier before me, though I wasn't absorbing a word. I could sense her, that aura of bold confidence laced with hidden disdain. She glided toward the front, exchanging air kisses, tossing out compliments laced with venom. She claimed her seat like she owned the entire building. Technically, she owned half of it. Co-founder, co-owner, co-architect of my personal descent. Her presence at the annual meeting wasn't a surprise, she always showed up. But this time was different. This time, she was primed to torch everything and watch me burn in the ashes. When the floor opened for remarks, she leaned into her mic with a saccharine smile. "I just want to acknowledge Ethan," she said, her voice smooth and deliberate. "He's been a cornerstone for this company. Tireless, dependable, like a well-oiled machine. You wind him up, he runs. And when you're done, well, you tuck him away in the garage and trade up for something with better horsepower." The room tittered, some laughs uneasy, others cruel. My assistant's mouth twitched, unsure if he was allowed to join in. A new board member glanced from Lauren to me, then quickly buried her gaze in her notes. I offered a faint smile, just enough to keep them guessing about how I'd taken it. What Lauren didn't realize, or maybe had forgotten, was that I wasn't the same man she'd walked out on 8 months ago. I wasn't the 45-year-old who pleaded for answers when she left our home with 2 suitcases and a pair of designer shades, claiming she needed perspective. I wasn't the guy who dropped 12 pounds from stress, lying awake wondering where she was, who she was with. I wasn't the fool scrolling through her Instagram stories, watching her pose with her new fling in rooftop bars and museum galas, pretending none of this was real. That man was gone. I sat still, letting her revel in her own wit. My pulse didn't spike, my stomach didn't churn, not anymore. Because while she'd been playing to the crowd, I'd been preparing something far sharper, the truth. You see, I knew about Ryan. She hadn't named him in court filings or during those icy, clinical email exchanges. She hadn't admitted he was more than a colleague, but she didn't need to. The clues were there: dinners booked for 2, weekend trips to Seattle billed to the company card, corporate funds siphoned into a shadow account I'd uncovered 4 months earlier. I stayed silent. I waited. I collected. I built a case, not just for the divorce, but for everything she thought she could take. Being underestimated gives you space to maneuver quietly. So when she taunted me in front of that room of executives and investors, people who once saw me as just a reserved numbers guy, a back-office mind with no grit, I didn't waver. Because I knew something she didn't. The moment she made this public, she handed me the green light to strike. It wasn't anger coursing through me that day, it was precision, something purer, keener. I'd spent years building this company alongside her. I knew its pulse, its secrets, its vulnerabilities. Now, I was going to wield every ounce of that knowledge, not to ruin her, no, that'd be too simple. I was going to unmask her, not out of spite or heartbreak, but because some people don't get to walk away unscathed. And Lauren? She was about to learn how surgical I could be. When you're teetering on a decision that could rewrite everything, a strange calm settles in, like your body grasps the stakes before your mind catches up. That's how I felt as I rose from my chair. The room still hummed from Lauren's little show, a few people chuckling softly, trying to gauge whose side to take without picking one. I could see the split forming in real time, her loyalists leaning toward her like moths to a flame, the rest feigning ignorance of the public flaying of a man who'd once been a company pillar. Lauren didn't even glance my way, she thought she'd landed the final blow. Maybe once, she would have. But the Ethan she'd abandoned, hoping for reconciliation, swallowing his pride, had vanished somewhere between therapy sessions she dodged and court filings she weaponized. I walked deliberately to the center of the conference room, silent, moving with purpose. A few exchanged puzzled looks, others leaned forward, sensing a shift. The COO shifted uneasily in his seat. An intern dropped their pen. I reached up, unbuttoned my blazer slowly, no rush, no theatrics, just intent. Then my dress shirt, one button at a time, collar, chest, sternum. I slipped the fabric off, folded it once in my hand. The room went dead quiet, you could hear the air conditioning hum. I wasn't posing or preening, just standing there, letting them see. 9 months ago, after Lauren left, I couldn't face my reflection. I felt frail, pathetic, not just emotionally but physically. So I did something I hadn't in years. I started waking at 4:30 a.m. and hit the gym. It wasn't about bulking up, it was about reclaiming something: discipline, focus, strength. What stood there that morning wasn't the Ethan they knew. The softness was gone, replaced by a frame honed by quiet fury and relentless routine, shoulders wider, chest tighter, veins tracing my forearms. Across my torso, faint white scars from old surgeries, reminders of past fights. But the centerpiece was fresh, a tattoo, stark and bold, spanning the left side of my chest, a stallion shattering its reins, mid-kick, muscles taut, eyes blazing with rebellion. It wasn't just art, it was a manifesto. I watched Lauren's face. Her composure cracked for the first time in years, maybe ever. She looked uncertain, leaning back slightly, as if trying to reframe the man before her. Next to her sat Ryan, impeccably polished, always grinning Ryan, her strategy advisor, her pristine sidekick who'd only recently made the payroll. He fidgeted, adjusted his cufflinks, avoided my gaze. He glanced at my tattoo, then back at the table, like it might lunge if he lingered. He looked rattled. Good. Because this wasn't just about showing I'd changed, it was about reminding them, her, that I was never someone you could dismiss as a footnote. Still shirtless, I stepped to the boardroom table, picked up a black binder, and held it aloft just long enough for all to see. I set it down with a heavy, resonant thud. This, I said softly, is where the real presentation begins. No drama, no shouting, just calm, razor-sharp assurance. I suggest everyone take a close look, because what's inside this binder will redirect this company and reveal exactly who's been driving it off course. A moment of silence. Then the legal counsel reached forward, pulled the binder to him, and opened it. His eyes scanned quickly, then froze. He looked at Lauren, then back at me. I saw it hit him, the weight of it. Expense reports, credit card statements, internal invoices, emails, transfers to accounts the company didn't know existed. I didn't need to say her name, everyone knew. And Lauren, she didn't laugh, didn't smirk. Her mouth hung slightly open, stunned, not just by the binder but by the man standing before her, bare-chested, tattooed, unflinching. Not the husband she thought she'd discarded, but someone else entirely, a storm she hadn't seen brewing. The first time I suspected Lauren was siphoning company funds, I didn't want to believe it. It was mid-November, and I was in my home office, my dork den, as she used to call it, reviewing quarterly expenses. I just poured a third glass of bourbon when I spotted it, a travel expense under Client Outreach, Northwest Division. Except it wasn't a client trip, it was a luxury penthouse booked in Seattle, a city with no active projects, no scheduled meetings, and no reason to drop $6,000 over a weekend. I didn't confront her. I copied the file and started a new desktop folder, Lauren_unverified. Over the next 3 months, that folder swelled. Designer shoes labeled as client gifts, private yoga classes billed as wellness programs, a Porsche lease marked as regional operations vehicle. But the real kicker. A string of payments to a strategy consulting firm in Washington, registered, surprise, to Ryan as managing director. They weren't just carving out a life together, they were funding it with my company's money. The betrayal didn't even sting the most, it was the gall. Lauren wasn't just plotting her exit, she was using the systems I'd built, the processes I designed, to bankroll her getaway. She knew I'd find it eventually, that's what made it worse. She thought I'd be too shattered to act. She thought wrong. Back in the boardroom, I gave the legal counsel a slight nod. You'll find detailed notes in the index, everything cross-referenced against company policy, timestamps, approval origins, I said evenly. This isn't guesswork, it's forensic. A senior partner flipped through pages, his jaw tightening as he scanned, hoping the numbers might shift. They didn't, I'd made sure of that. This is significant, he muttered. It's just the start, I replied, sliding another folder across. This one covers the fraudulent consulting contracts. That got Ryan's attention. He sat bolt upright, like someone had doused him with cold water. His eyes flicked to the folder, then to Lauren, who still hadn't spoken. She stared ahead, blinking, breathing shallowly, like she might faint. I took a breath and faced the room. For years, Lauren and I built this company together. We didn't come from wealth. We started with grit, late nights, sacrifice. We fought our way into this market with blood and sweat. And while I was here, showing up, safeguarding our future, she was redirecting the very foundation we built into her personal piggy bank. The board went silent. No one looked at her anymore, they looked at me. I have evidence Lauren and Ryan have been misusing company funds for at least 20 months. It starts small, dinners, hotel stays, travel costs, but it grows. Wire transfers, unearned bonuses, a Seattle property tied to a holding company linked to Ryan's firm. I pointed to a highlighted page. This is the wire for the down payment. A few gasped. A junior partner whispered, Christ. I turned to Lauren. She finally met my gaze, fear, yes, but also realization. She knew what this was, not a outburst, not a scorned ex flinging accusations. This was strategy, lethal, calculated, patient. The kind of precision she used to respect in me when we were building together. This evidence, I continued, has been vetted by external counsel. A third-party forensic accountant has confirmed the transactions. I'll be submitting the full report to the firm's legal team and requesting an immediate ethics review. No response from Lauren, but Ryan looked like he might lose his lunch. I stepped forward, placing the final piece on the table, a photo of the Seattle condo, sleek, sterile, pricey, and a security still of Ryan and Lauren entering arm in arm, timestamped 2:13 a.m. This is your consulting work? I asked Ryan. He didn't answer, he didn't need to. I faced the board one last time. I don't expect decisions now, but I advise that while Lauren retains board access and system privileges, she poses a clear risk to the company, our investors, and our reputation. Then I grabbed my shirt and left, not in anger, not in shame, but in control. Let them stew. By the time I exited, I could hear the murmurs, those hushed tones when a room's air gets sucked out and people scramble to recalibrate their worldview. I didn't pause, didn't look back. I walked to my office, still shirtless, binder under arm, pulse steady. The same people who'd snickered at Lauren's barbs now couldn't meet my eyes in the hall. Funny how fast the mood shifts when the spotlight moves. I shut my office door, locked it, sat at my desk, and let the quiet sink in. Then I opened the drawer and pulled out the flash drive, nothing fancy, just a slim 128 gigabyte stick. I'd spent weeks debating whether to use it, telling myself the financials were enough, that I didn't need to get personal. But Lauren and Ryan made it personal long before I hit record. Living with someone like Lauren makes you feel unhinged for noticing the truth. You doubt your instincts. So I stopped trusting feelings and started trusting proof. I'd installed security cameras in our house 2 years earlier, when we were traveling often and burglaries were spiking nearby. At least, that's what I told her. She approved, even helped pick the gear. What she didn't know, I added 2 discrete, legal audio devices in the study and upstairs lounge, voice-activated, tucked behind wall art and inside a floor lamp. I didn't check the recordings until months after she left, expecting maybe proof she'd taken a few things during the split. Instead, I got a front-row seat to her betrayal. The first clip, a rainy Wednesday afternoon in the lounge. Lauren and Ryan, laughing, casual at first, discussing projections. Then, like a switch flipped, the tone shifted. Ethan won't see it coming, she said. He's too proud. That's the problem with men like him, always trying to do what's right. It makes them predictable. Ryan chuckled. You're ruthless. She laughed. I'm effective. And don't pretend you're not loving this. Another clip, 3 days later, in my home office, my space, my chair. I'm thinking we file first, she whispered. Put him on the defensive. He's too soft for a fight. By the time he catches on, we'll control the firm's narrative. You think you won't push back? Ryan asked. Please, she said. He still thinks loyalty matters in business. He won't risk his reputation. He'll take the loss quietly. That's who he is. I leaned back in my chair, recalling the fury I felt hearing those words, not for their cruelty, but their arrogance. She truly believed I'd fade silently. That's why I saved the clips, made copies, time-stamped, transcribed, and backed them up in the cloud. I took the flash drive, slipped it into a padded envelope, and walked it to legal. Handed it to Sarah, our in-house counsel, and said, start with the file named lounge_5_22.wave, then work through. She frowned, puzzled, but nodded. Loop in external counsel. Yes, I said. And when you're done, I want a full report to the board, annotated. As I turned to leave, she asked, Ethan, what's on here? I paused. Proof, I said. The kind people can't twist. Back in my office, I watched the clouds drift outside. It had started raining, not heavy, but steady, the kind of Texas rain that reminds you nature doesn't care about your plans. But for once, I did. Everything was timed, my stand at the meeting, the financials, the recordings. Lauren didn't just lose the room, she walked into a trap. She handed me the stage, thinking I'd fumble. I didn't. Now the board had the numbers, soon, they'd hear her voice, her and Ryan, laughing about bleeding me dry, calling me useful but dim, gloating about rigging the prenup she insisted on 7 years ago, back when I thought protecting her meant protecting us. I leaned forward, elbows on the desk, and smiled for the first time in ages. They'd made a mistake. They thought I was shattered. I wasn't. I was building. Real revenge isn't fire or rage, it's not yelling matches or public scenes. It's paperwork, quiet talks behind closed doors, documents with letterheads, procedures followed to the letter. That's what makes it lasting. It took less than 24 hours. By 7:30 a.m. the next morning, Lauren's access to company systems was cut off, her login flashed a red error, her corporate card was frozen, her company laptop locked. I didn't do it, legal did. Protocols kicked in once they reviewed the flash drive. I hadn't even finished my coffee when my phone pinged. Sarah, it's done. She's locked out. Board's briefed. You're covered. 2 minutes later, a text from Lauren, what the hell is happening? Call me. I didn't reply. The firm issued a discreet internal memo by noon, pending review, Lauren Pierce will step back from executive duties, effective immediately. No mention of the investigation, not yet. But people talk, and in high-stakes firms like ours, silence is just a prelude to something louder. Ryan tried to play it cool, strolling into the office that morning with his usual grin, like he was too slick to get caught. But you could see it, his shoulders stiff, his voice catching when he greeted the receptionist. The guy who thought he'd slide into my seat just realized it was wired. By 2:30 p.m. Our CFO team flagged the irregular transfers, consulting payments funneled from project budgets to a shell company Ryan set up 6 months after he started seeing Lauren. I had the wire transfer summaries in my inbox before the day ended, tens of thousands, not just to him, but to non-existent subcontractors, ghost vendors, fake services. It wasn't just unethical, it was fraud, the kind the IRS doesn't overlook. That evening, I met with Sarah and the CEO behind closed doors, no assistants, no board observers. I laid out everything, timelines, statements, vendor lists, Lauren's digital signature greenlighting, specialized consultant, payouts, Ryan's company as the recipient almost every time. We'll need to file a formal report, Sarah said quietly. This goes beyond misconduct. The CEO nodded, face grim. Let me be clear, Ethan. Are you alleging Lauren and Ryan conspired to embezzle? I didn't flinch. I'm not alleging, I said, sliding over a printout of an email from Lauren's personal account. I'm proving. They didn't ask how I got the email. They didn't need to. Once the flash drive was in play, everything was fair game. 2 days later, the firm filed a voluntary disclosure to the IRS. Everything shifted. Lauren's silence broke when the board announced an investigation naming her and Ryan. She went into overdrive: calls, texts, emails. First, fury: "You're torching the company we built." Then desperation: "Can we talk? This is too far." Finally, pleading: "Ethan, I'm sorry. I need your help. Don't let them ruin me." I didn't respond, not because I had nothing to say, but because everything worth saying was already documented, signed, submitted. Meanwhile, Ryan was coming apart. He stopped showing up. Word spread he'd hired a lawyer, not a defense attorney yet, but a white-collar consultant. You could feel it in the office, that eerie buzz of collapse. Assistants whispered, executives moved with purpose but no direction. Everyone knew something was coming, no one knew what. And me? I worked, quietly, efficiently. Meetings, budgets, forecasts. I made it clear I wasn't hiding. I was operating. Betrayal doesn't break you, it exposes you. Lauren spent years thinking I was just numbers and spreadsheets, a machine, built to work, shelved when obsolete. But machines don't shut down, they recalibrate, retool, adapt. One evening that week, I stood in the executive break room, watching Austin's skyline fade into dusk. My reflection in the glass, leaner, clearer-eyed, steady. The door creaked. Sarah stepped in, holding a slim folder. "They're preparing suspensions," she said softly, "pending the review's outcome." "Both of them?" I nodded. "Ryan's already halfway gone, no one wants to touch him. Lauren's got some holdouts, but they're fading fast." I turned back to the glass. "It's odd, watching something you built crumble." Sarah paused, then said, "Sometimes things need to crumble so you can build better." I nodded, not agreement, just understanding. She was right. Lauren's empire was falling, piece by piece. It happened faster than I expected. Once the board suspended Lauren, it was like a trapdoor swung open. Her privileges were revoked, her access blocked, her parking spot reassigned, all in hours. Just like that, she was outside something she thought was inseparable from her, the company, me, her throne. She tried to fight it, firing off a tone-deaf email to a few board members, tossing around miscommunication and overreach on incomplete data. I got CC'd on one, probably by mistake. Pure Lauren, polished panic wrapped in passive-aggressive legalese. No one replied. When you lose credibility in a world built on optics, people don't even fake loyalty. They ghost your calls, clear your nameplate like it's toxic, smile at the new order, and act like they were never in your corner. Ryan didn't even try. He resigned 2 days after the announcement, no statement, no meeting, just a one-line email to HR and a quiet exit via the freight elevator. Word was he'd booked a one-way to Nevada, probably thinking he could outrun the IRS, the SEC, or the version of himself that thought he could outsmart me. Lauren stayed in town at first. I thought she'd bolt, maybe to Europe or that Seattle condo she bought with company cash. But she didn't. Maybe she thought she could salvage it. Maybe she had nowhere left to go. I saw her once, a week after Ryan vanished. She was outside a cafe on South Lamar, sunglasses on, cradling a latte like it held answers. Her hair was in that perfect, practiced bun she wore to investor pitches, but her face betrayed her, drawn, pale, eyes pinched. She looked diminished, like the world's weight had settled on her. I didn't stop, just kept walking. But I caught the moment she saw me, her head tilted, lips parted like she might speak. Nothing came. She just watched me pass. That was enough. I didn't need apologies, tears, or closure. I needed that moment, when she saw I wasn't broken, that she hadn't destroyed me, that I'd taken every piece of her chaos and built something stronger. That week, I took her chair at the board table, officially temporary, unofficially permanent. I didn't gloat, didn't blast out memos or update my LinkedIn. I just showed up, same seat, same view, different man. I ran the meeting, owned the room, presented revised financials, tightened our consulting policy, and launched a new ethics oversight committee. Lauren would have called it a coup. I called it restoration. For the first time, people listened, not out of fear, but trust. I wasn't selling flash, I was offering something rare, stability. Beneath it all, I was calm, peaceful, even. Not because it didn't hurt, it did. The betrayal, the manipulation, the months I spent wondering if I'd failed, if I wasn't enough, if I'd missed the signs, hadn't fought hard enough, hadn't loved her right. But that wasn't true. The truth was simpler, harsher, she chose, and now I had to. A few nights later, I got the first message, blocked number, no name, I miss you. I was foolish. Can we talk? Then another, you don't have to forgive me. I just need your voice. Then, I lost everything, Ethan. Everything. I don't know who I am without it. I didn't reply. She kept texting, daily, sometimes hourly. Guilt-soaked confessions, manipulative pleas, callbacks to our early days, the firm we built, nights with cheap wine and napkin sketches. She was trying to reel me back, sell me a version of us that only lived in her head. I didn't bite. Those nights were real, but so was everything after, so was Ryan, so were the files, so were the lies whispered in rooms I built, a home I paid for, a life I carved from nothing. You don't get to erase that. You don't get to beg for mercy with the blade still warm. A week after her last text, the firm issued its final report. Ryan was referred for investigation. Lauren was formally ousted from the board, no spectacle, just signatures, just consequences. And me? I exhaled for the first time in years. I wasn't reacting, chasing, or trying to save something already broken. I was standing on solid ground.